The AvranceCorp Developments YouTube channel, Quality Homes for All.
Welcome to another edition of AvranceCorp Presents. I am Carney Andrews. Hope you're feeling well out there today, and I'm sure you're here for the main event, so to speak. It's something that we really can't get around here in 2026. You know, we've talked about it with previous guests here on AvranceCorp Presents, but this showdown between Prime Minister Mark Carney and American President Donald Trump is something that a lot of people are looking very closely at this year. And we've saw a little bit of the preamble to this sort of this thing with the recent meetings over there in Switzerland in Davos, where we saw Mark Carney rattle the bear a little bit there with that speech that raised the ires of Donald Trump there. And basically motivated him to threaten Carney and Canada with 100% tariffs if Canada does a deal, trade deal with China. And so, you know, just looking at this thing, this kind of reminded me of, you know, because I am a big MMA fan, a UFC fan, and, you know, if this was a tale of the tape sort of thing, I think that President Trump would definitely have the advantage. You know, just physically speaking, you know, if we take a look at them here, and let's go to the picture here just to get a perspective here, because Donald Trump is obviously a big person physically at 6'3", compared to, I believe, 5'9" for Mark Carney. And I believe that President Trump at 6'3" weighs approximately 235 pounds or so. Maybe a little more, maybe a little less. Depends on how many Big Macs he's eaten. Apparently he's a big fan of McDonald's. So, you know, to put this into physical perspective, President Trump is a heavyweight. And Prime Minister Carney, while his weight isn't publicly available, I would estimate that he would be like a welterweight or maybe a middleweight at the most, you know, somewhere between, you know, 170 and 185 pounds. So, you know, this is really not a fair fight physically, as you know, there are weight classes in boxing and in UFC for a reason. And, you know, the disparity here in weight pretty much tells the tale. But of course, this is not a physical competition. This is about trade. It is about a lot of other economic connections for each country. And it's something that, quite frankly, we should be able to resolve in a normal setting. I'm sure many Canadians listening will remember when President Trump initially seemed to favor what Mark Carney was doing with China, basically saying, and I'm paraphrasing, if you can do a deal with China, you should do that. I think that was the sound sample that I was hearing played across a lot of Canadian media this past week. And then fast forward to after the speech to where, you know, he threatens Canada with 100% tariffs. Now, previously, you know, the relationship between Canada and U.S. has been a very beneficial one. It's been a very friendly one. You know, we do share, you know, the longest undefended border. And we do tend to agree on a lot of North American issues. You know, you go all the way back to President Brian Mulroney in the mid to late 80s, signing the free trade deal with President Ronald Reagan, and you know, beginning the that long agreement of the principle of free trade across the borders. And fast forward all the way to today, where President Trump came up with that Kuzma deal, which kind of continue that framework where parts, goods, and things of that nature across the border tariff free. And of course, all of that was put into jeopardy, with the when Donald Trump introduced these tariffs. So we're back to this showdown because the Kuzma deal is going to be up for review later this year, and a lot of eyes are on that review because if that deal expires or there's no agreement worked out, no extension, et cetera, then it's going to cause a lot of consequences or a lot of implications for the Canadian economy because a lot of those goods currently flowing across the American border are going to be subject to tariffs. And of course, that's going to increase costs. And it's going to increase costs for a lot of, importers, people, who have a lot of business connection with the United States. And it's going to affect a lot of industries as well, related, like agriculture, our auto sector, all those goods that rely on that agreement. And so a lot of people are wondering if, cooler heads can prevail between now and when that agreement goes up for review. So, will there be an extension? Will there be an agreement? A lot of people seem to be very concerned about that. Yours truly accepted. But as time goes on, we see that Mark Carney, not in addition to that speech that he made in Davos, actually proceeded with a small deal, some might say a serious deal nonetheless, with China allowing 49,000 electric vehicles into Canada. Basically, those vehicles are subject to a small tariff. And a lot of people in Canada, particularly conservative, the conservative faction, are saying that this is the beginning of the end, allowing China to grab a foothold into Canada, and that could basically mean the end of the auto sector here in Canada. They point to the aggressive practices of China elsewhere with other countries, and they are obviously very negative on what Mark Carney has done in terms of this deal. And then there's the other side. I guess the liberal side would say that Canada needs to stand up on its own 2 feet and begin to aggressively look for trade partners elsewhere outside the United States. They need to pursue these things, and this deal with China is basically a leverage, a bargaining chip, to let President Trump know that Canada is not dependent on the United States and that we do have other options. And I think the first salvo was launched when Trump, threatened the tariffs. So I guess we'll have to see how this plays out. Will it be a bargaining chip? Will it allow Canada to negotiate a better deal, or at least the current deal with Kuzma? Or will it aggravate the United States into punishing Canada with, these tariffs, and thus affecting the various sectors of our economy? What I'd like to do now is just play a small clip of our last guest, Noel Clubb, who had some interesting things to say about his opinions on the performance of Mark Carney with respect to the economy and the American tariffs. So check this out.
Yeah, that's so this is a tough one, I think, for all of us because our costs have all gone up.
Yeah.
So that comes down to federal government spending and policies and so forth. And unfortunately, we're on the bad end of the tariffs with Mark Carney's not. He's actually failing. He's failing us. Let's be honest here with the tariffs. Everywhere he's gone to do a tariff deal, we lose somehow. I don't know how that works, but we seem to be spending more money, and of course, taxes have all gone up. Inflation went up. They're printing more money over the last 5 6 years. So all these things just add up to more costs and higher costs of living, and our food costs have gone up. Like we had true and real food shortages in terms of you go to a restaurant, you're getting way less, but you're paying way more because that's being taxed as well inside the tax, right? As federal government is taxing all these companies as well that makes food and transportation. It's all been overly taxed and carbon tax and all these other hidden taxes. But who will pay for it in the day? Well, that's you and I, right? So all these things come back to hurt us, and that impacts our wallet and our spending power and our spending ability, what we can do short term and long term. And furthermore, look at employment rates also gone up much higher. Went from 6.5% in December 25 to now 6.8% here in not even we're only mid January of 2026 here, and we've already gone up as well. So it's really concerning in that sense. So therefore, the housing market and the rental market is in a bad shape because their costs have gone up, and also the cost of living's gone way up. And I've also seen a lot of reports before coming to your show. Just out of curiosity, was what's going on, what people are saying about the rental market. And I was shopping around myself in the rental market this
Mm,
past spring and summer, so I had a like really good grounds view what's going on. And
mm.
I'm reading all these reports from like some really significant organizations, and I was quite disappointed because what they're saying is it's a very soft market. Actually, it's a very as costs have gone up there too. Rents have gone up, which they don't tell you that. The rents went up, so you're renting now smaller space for more money.
Mm.
Doesn't matter where you go in Ontario, it's actually gone up too. I found it very misleading in terms of what I've seen in mass media on that reporting. And yeah, look at the condo sales. That was one of the worst years we've had, and I do not see how it's going to turn around right now. Which is what's going on right now with the world. It, of course, creates more insecurities, and it's going to impact more jobs as what's going on too in the bigger picture. So I see the market's going to be really tough. It's going to be really tough. I've seen projections of like 2 3 4% increases in terms of buying, maybe sort of just very very soft and modest, but I think even that is could be a little bit optimistic, just based on what's going on right now with the economy.
All right, so that was property manager Noel Clubb last week here on AvranceCorp Presents, sharing his thoughts on the performance of Prime Minister Carney and the amount of costs that Canadians are experiencing currently. And there's no question that costs have gone up pretty much above in every board, whether it's real estate or housing or the cars. Costs are definitely up, and Carney is in a difficult position here because conservatives will point to the fact that Carney said he was elected to, he was the one who was going to be able to make the deal with Trump. He's the one that knows how to make the deal, and thus far he hasn't really been able to make that deal. Instead, we've seen a lot of tariffs here, and we've seen a lot of costs go up. Now, earlier this morning, the Bank of Canada announced that the overnight mortgage rate is unchanged at 2.25%, basically putting the pause button on they're not they're basically not signaling that they're not going to be using the mortgage rate to try and affect anything. So it's really up to the prime minister here to get this deal done, because that's going to be one of the big influential factors here in in raising this cloud of uncertainty that we have over so many sectors of the economy. He did a good thing with the canola, getting the tariffs dropped by China on the canola. So I think a lot of people on the West Coast, but particularly a lot of farmers and the people in the agricultural sector, are relieved that those tariffs are now dropped, because I believe China buys approximately $5 billion worth of canola alone from Canada. So they're certainly happy. But on the flip side, the auto sectors took another hit, with the threat of another, another competitor coming in without having to build. But when we take a look at everything, there are a lot of auto competitors here that don't build. Subaru is here, Kia is here, Tesla is here. And as far as only the last time I checked, they don't have any factories or plants here, nor do they have any intentions of building here. So when I look at each side, I look at each argument here, I think each side has a good point there. I think there's definitely a threat, that people really buy these electric vehicles, because apparently these electric vehicles are very good. They've got a foothold in large parts of Europe, and it kind of reminds me of when Japanese cars first came over here into North America around the 70s, and people were afraid of those Japanese cars coming into North America, not because they were from Japan, but pretty much because they knew that they were much better cars. They were much superior in quality, and people would buy them over the North American cars. And this could be a similar situation here. These electric vehicles are so far ahead of everybody else. Now you can debate how they got so far ahead, with how China uses their system to basically they uses that advantage to get the level of quality up. They don't have the same. They don't do things the same way that manufacturers do here in North America. But I don't think anyone can question that those electric vehicles are high quality, and they could certainly find a few buyers here in Canada. And I think some people are hoping that, with the mere presence of these electric vehicles here in Canada, it will spur the current American automakers to step up their game and introduce a similar high quality product. Kind of like how the American automobile makers had to step up when the Japanese cars came into the American market. They stopped crying. They wiped up their. They stopped crying, and they basically got down to the task of making a better product, and it worked. Chrysler came up with the minivan, the K car, and that sold a lot of vehicles. Actually saved them from bankruptcy in the early '80s, and the rest is history. So, it's definitely a risky game, I think, that Mark Carney is playing right now. Do you antagonize the current administration in the United States to the point where Canada gets all these tariffs and makes things a lot harder for general Canadians just trying to put food on the table? Or do you try to stand up on your own 2 feet, get some trade deals done, maybe some deals with some countries that you previously labeled a threat, but you get trade deals done, and that way you're able to hammer out a deal with the United States? We're really going to have to see what happens here, but I want to know what you guys think. Do you agree with Mark Carney? How would you rate his performance thus far with respect to the tariffs and Donald Trump? Is he doing a good job? Where can he improve? Is it fair to even rate him right now, considering that this Kuzma thing has not been reviewed yet? He was just elected last March, right? And so, looking at his past, he seems to have the financial credentials to do something, with the Bank of Canada and the Bank of England, although there's a lot of controversy over his performance with the Bank of England. But there seems to be a favorable performance with what he did with respect to the Bank of Canada. I just remember reading even the Prime Minister at the time, Stephen Harper, asking him to become the finance minister after his tenure at the Bank of Canada. That was something that Carney declined at the time, but he was getting a lot of kudos for what he was able to do, because when he was the Bank of Canada in 2000, Bank of Canada, the head of the Bank of Canada there, that was around the time of the 2008 financial crisis, and we all know what happened with that, particularly in the United States. So, I think we'll have to basically see what happens here, because I do believe that Mark Carney is playing the long game here. He is trying to give Canada a bargaining chip in these negotiations. He's trying to make deals. When he went over there, apparently some other deals were made, and trying to try and let the United States know that, hey, we're not just dependent on you. We've got options too. And the fact, again, that this small deal got the president's attention, I think is an example of that. All right. That's going to do it for this edition of AvranceCorp Presents. But I want to let you know that next week we have a very special guest slated to appear. Realtor Linda Pinizzato is going to be joining us. She is an established realtor here in the Greater Toronto Area with over 40 years of experience. She lives and breathes real estate. Had a very nice chat with her yesterday. She's delighted to appear next week and share her knowledge and thoughts on real estate here in the Greater Toronto Area, across Canada, and even across North America. You don't want to miss that show. That's next Wednesday at 2 p.m. She's going to be here live. So if you want to ask her a question, that's fine. Put it in the comments, and she'll be delighted. But this will do it for this edition of AvranceCorp Presents. I am Carney Andrews. Thank you so much for stopping by. We do this every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we'll see you next week.